Yeah. Ready to go? Okay. The Planning Commission meeting of November 4th, 2020 will come to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Secretary will call roll, please.
Commissioner Tolson?
Here.
Commissioner Hodge?
Here.
Commissioner Rice?
Here.
Vice Chairperson Castleberry?
Here.
Chairperson May.
Here.
I have a brief announcement. The Zoom operator who will read emails, if any, received after 5 p.m. for this meeting is Management Assistant Christy Porter.
Perfect. Thank you. May I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
A motion was made by Commissioner Rice with a second. Oh, sorry. May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Yeah, too late, Commissioner Tolson. Commissioner Vice Chair Castleberry got you. A motion was made by Commissioner Rice, a second by Vice Chair Castleberry. Unless there's any objections, the agenda stands approved. May I have a motion for approval of minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, motion was made by Commissioner Tolson. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Hodge. Unless there are any objections, the agenda stands approved. Oh, sorry, take that back. Unless there are any seconds, the minutes stand approved. I'm getting there nowadays. Secretary will read the declaration of conflict, please.
If any member of the Planning Commission may have a conflict of interest or any reason why that member must abstain from consideration of any matter on this agenda, he or she should so declare at this time.
Are there any declarations of conflict? Hearing none, we'll move on. Public statements. Do we have any public statements for items not on the agenda?
Ms. Porter, did we receive any emails after 5 o'clock?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, correspondence. Is there any correspondence from the Deputy Director, City Planner?
Yes, Chairman Mann and members of the commission, provided to you earlier today were the 2 supplemental reports for item 11A1 regarding the hotel. One was 3 correspondence emails from the public regarding the project, and the second was a supplemental from the applicant regarding a summary of revenues regarding the project. So they'll be entered into the record.
Okay. Hearing no other correspondence, consent calendar. Don't have anything on consent calendar. Continued business. We have no new business. Or sorry, we have no continued business. Let's go on to new business. This is the time and place for a public hearing on the consideration of CUP S744, mod number 1, ZS751, and the negative declaration. Are there any ex parte communications to report? May we have an oral report on this matter by staff?
Yes, good evening, Chairman Mann, members of the Planning Commission. This is a modification to a site behind the Junkyard Cafe, which has been previously approved for a hotel project several years ago, and a few iterations later, they're coming back with this modification, and we hope you'll consider their request tonight. And our associate planner, Naren Gunasakara, is here to present the report. Naren?
Good evening. The applicant, Land Developer and Associates Corporation, requests approval of a modification to a conditional use permit to construct a hotel on a 1.64-acre vacant lot. The request also includes a development code update to reduce the parking requirements for hotels and motels citywide. The project includes a negative declaration. The project site is shown here at 2585 Cochrane Street, north of the commercial building where the Junkyard Cafe is located. Access is via an easement across this commercial property fronting Cochrane Street. The 118 freeway is to the north, residences to the west, and commercial buildings to the east where Big Lots and the DIY Home Center are located. The original project was approved by the Planning Commission on December 3, 2014. Minor revisions were approved administratively on September 21, 2017, together with a time extension. The modification before you was applied for in August 2019, in part because of the elimination of the subterranean parking. You can see the site in these photos with views towards the adjoining properties to the south and the west. This is the originally approved site plan, which indicates a subterranean parking garage in green. This is the proposed site plan, and the building mass is now concentrated on the east side of the property, with the majority of the parking lot taking up the western side of the property. There is still an outdoor component to the hotel, but with a spa only instead of a pool and spa was with the previous approval. Because the underground parking structure is eliminated, most of the parking is now placed along the western property line. The fire department is requiring that an access easement be secured across the commercial property to the north as a condition of the project. The primary changes to the project are shown here, with an addition of a story, reduction of the room count to 98 rooms, an increase in the height of the building elements, and elimination of the subterranean parking garage.
Excuse me, Chairman Mann?
Yes.
What Commissioner Tolson and I are seeing, I don't know if you're seeing it, the identification of the persons who are attending the meeting, including myself, are on the right-hand side of the what we're looking at, cutting off that portion of the slide. So I couldn't see the last words in the prior slide. I think we're good at this point, but if we could remove those from now, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I'm not seeing that on my screen, but I'm sure staff is. Mr. Gibson? Are you seeing what Commissioner Hodge is saying?
Yeah, we're seeing what.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing for a second and reshare.
Hide video panel.
Is that better?
Commissioner Hodge?
You know what happens if I hit my view options for hide video panel, it went away. So I'm good. I was able to correct it.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a rendering of the proposed project from the west. The hotel will have a business center, a breakfast area, and a fitness room all on the first floor, which will only be available to hotel guests. The guest room sizes range from 295 square feet to 711 square foot suites. The proposed hotel continues to be a Santa Barbara Mission style structure with varying roofline heights. The colors and materials remain the same as the previously approved project. The main building will be constructed of ivory stucco walls with 4 wood trim and accents in dark brown, with a red clay tile roof with composite wood rafters. The building includes a 1-story porte cochere at the main entrance. This area will serve as the drop-off zone for guests and as the required 12 by 50 truck loading zone. The bell tower will include articulated columns with wrought iron decorative features and arched windows at the tower element. Portions of the second story and floors above are furred out and will provide depth and shadows, breaking up the building's mass, and will incorporate a forward trim and accents to provide variety in color. Landscaping will cover 18% of the site and includes a 10-foot landscape buffer to the west with a continuous row of 48-inch box trees adjacent to the single-family residences. This is the view from the main portion of the hotel. The applicant has provided line-of-sight studies that indicate the 10-foot landscape buffer, the line of proposed trees, and the 6-foot-high wall will block views to and from the main portion of the proposed hotel. Note the tower element and elevator mechanical penthouse are unoccupied. The rooftop equipment is located on the flat portion of the mansard roof and will be screened from public view. The top of the tower and signage will be visible from the 118 freeway going eastbound, but given the angle, it is unlikely that any hillside views will be blocked. Similarly, the hotel will be screened from Cochrane by the existing building and trees, and no hillside views are impacted. The project requires setbacks equal to the height of the building unless the Planning Commission accepts deviations from the required setbacks based on the proximity of the 118 freeway and commercial buildings. The arrows in green are the setbacks to the west where the residences are located, and these are consistent with the 1-to-1 requirement. The red arrows to the north, south, and east indicate setbacks that must be modified to be less than the height of the proposed buildings. This map shows that the modified setbacks will not result in any adverse impacts to the neighboring properties. To the north, the setback is appropriate since it is adjacent to the freeway. The reduced setback to the south does not impose any impacts as it is adjacent to the parking lot for the commercial building where the Junkyard Cafe is located. There is over 300 feet from the property line of the project to this building. To the east is the loading area for the adjacent commercial building. The building setbacks to the residential zone on the west side are consistent with the height to setback ratio and are not modified. The applicant has also requested a development code update to reduce the parking requirement for hotels and motels citywide in order to meet the required parking on site. It should be noted that the proposed reduction is from 1 space to 0.75 spaces per room only. The proposed code amendment does not change the parking requirement for employees or parking requirements for restaurants, coffee shops, and conference rooms open to the public. The applicant's consultant analyzed the parking ratio of occupied rooms to parking spaces at 2 different hotels in Simi Valley with 2 days of counts at each location. The study found an average parking ratio of 0.68 parking spaces per occupied room. The city's traffic engineer and planning staff reviewed the study and noted that the effect of reduced occupancy due to COVID-19 was probably controlled through the calculation of the parking ratio, which takes this into account. Staff did note that the data was collected in 2 non-consecutive days per location and didn't include a weekend. The study indicated that based on the Institute of Traffic Engineers parking generation data graph for hotels, the 1-to-1 room-to-parking ratios are more applicable to larger hotels where facilities such as conference centers and restaurants drive more parking demand. There are a number of cities where the room-to-parking space ratio is 0.75 or less. These jurisdictions are, however, relatively urbanized cities in Los Angeles and Orange County with generally well-developed public transit systems. Staff summarized hotel and motel parking requirements for cities within Ventura County or in close geographical proximity in LA County, but none had a parking requirement that is less than 1 space per room. The study concludes that changing technology, such as the rise of ride-sharing services, suburban areas increasing in density, and the future development and implementation of autonomous vehicles, further supports reducing the parking requirement for hotels. Staff found corroborating information for the increase in rideshare services and reductions in car rentals as laid out in the staff report. The table shows the project parking requirements per our current code and per the proposed requirement of 0.75 spaces per room, which is approximately a 20% parking reduction. The 0.75 space per room requirement is consistent with occupancy rates information provided by the applicant, ITE data, and staff research. Overall, staff supports the development code amendment, and with the code amendment, 78 spaces would be required at 0.75 spaces per room, plus 1 space per 3 staff members on the largest shift, and 79 spaces are proposed by the project. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the conditional use permit modification, the development code update, and the project's negative declaration. This concludes my presentation, and staff are available for questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, questions of staff?
Yes, I have a couple questions for you, please. Is there anything that would stop this hotel from becoming an extended stay hotel? If the applicant decided to, instead of using a regular hotel, make it an extended stay, is there anything to prevent them from doing that?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Currently, there's no conditions currently
Okay.
that indicate that
All
either.
right, because that did come up with a different project we had in another place. Do you know where the nearest bus stop is to this hotel or proposed hotel?
It's within about half a mile. I can't remember the exact
Yeah,
location.
if it's with the one I'm thinking of, it's over on the main intersection, so that's about half a mile. And the other one is, can you tell me the other 4-story buildings in the city?
One, for example, is the Courtyard by Marriott next to the Walmart on
Yeah.
Madera. That's the other hotel that's 4 stories.
Is there no, I thought there was one more.
Senior Valley Hospital,
Oh, okay,
I mean, there's 2 there, and obviously
Yeah.
Farmers was taken down.
right. Okay,
And I think Extended Stay America's 3 stories off of Stearns.
yes, I think so. Okay, thank you.
Yes, this is Tim Hodge. I have a couple past questions.
Okay, Commissioner Hodge, go ahead. Commissioner
Thank
Hodge, go
you.
ahead, thank you.
Yes, thank you. You just mentioned the Marriott. This particular hotel, in addition to being 4 stories, has some architecture that raises the height to 66 feet, I believe. What is the maximum height of the Marriott?
I don't think we have the maximum height with us. It has similar pitched roof elements. I don't believe it has a particular tower that goes beyond. If you want, Narn can pull up a Google Street View, and we could pull it up if you'd like to see the Google Street View.
No, I've seen it.
Okay.
I just didn't know if, and I agree with the pitched roof elements, being somewhat similar, but that tower is clearly not at the Marriott property. There's on this particular property on the east side there is the back of I believe it's the odd lot, the big lots rather. And I went out there today, this weekend, and took a look at it. And the change in elevation from the east portion of this parcel to the west portion of the adjoining parcel is quite substantial. Would you agree it's in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 feet?
Yes, about 6 to 8, if I remember.
Yeah, so the property to the east is about 8 to 10 feet in elevation, less than the extreme east side of this parcel, correct?
Yes.
All right. The property has an elevation gain as you go from the southern portion of the property to the northern portion of the property. I don't know how many feet it gains. I'm guessing it's in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 degrees of, which would create positive drainage. My question isn't so much that. The question is the property is going to be level to itself, correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
Would that be correct? The property is going to be level?
Yes.
All right. So in order to make it level, you're either going to have to raise the area underneath the southern portion, or and have it go down, to the north rather, to make it level. And that may include reducing the height of the property at the northern side by going somewhat subterranean from the existing grade. What is it going to be? Are you going to, is the property, does the plan include the current north portion of the parcel being reduced in grade, or are you just going to raise the southern portion and go back so that the
We're losing you, sir. Commissioner Hodge, you'll have to repeat what you just said.
the building is grade for
Commissioner Hodge, we cannot understand anything you're saying. Try again. Nope, still not getting you. You sound like aliens have taken over your microphone.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir, yes.
This is David LaFale. I represent West Coast Technical, the civil engineers. We are daylighting at the junkyard parking lot and progressing north to the 118 property line. That's where the cut will be, and there's a retaining wall along that property line.
Okay, thank you, but I'll actually let you hold your comments until we get to your part of the presentation, sir.
Yes, can you hear me now, Commissioner Chairman Mann?
Yes, Commissioner Hodge, by all means, please go ahead and restate your question, please.
Okay, yeah, I think I heard part of the answer. I'm curious to know if the northern portion will be at grade, will be elevated from its current grade, or will it be, will that portion of the property be cut down so that it's at below grade where it is now?
And I think we'll refer that question to the applicant first, and staff will fill in the blanks if there's any questions after that.
Okay.
That's okay with me. That's fine. Those are my questions for now.
Okay, Commissioner Tolson, any questions, sir?
No questions.
Okay, well, I have a few questions, actually. Did the prior approval, I'm assuming, which was the CUP S744, no mod 1, have the need for the second emergency access?
No, it did not, because the second emergency access is required once you exceed a certain height.
And so the second shared emergency access looks like that's on the adjoining property. So I'm assuming there's some kind of access road agreement, maintenance, something, or an easement that will be put on that property that owner is willing to give for this?
So the applicant will need to get that easement and record it as a condition of approval from the fire department.
Again, I'm assuming I already know the answer, but let's just verify. The prior approval did not have the setback modifications needed because there was not the additional height, correct?
It did have setback modifications, but not to the extent of this project.
Okay. Again, prior approval did not have the request, the ZS, the text amendment for the parking, because they had parking subterranean, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If we do grant the ZS751, or approve to go on to the council for the change of the parking, that affects this development, future development. What about current developments? Can they then go in and do a modification and lower their parking requirements to do something else with their extra parking spaces?
Theoretically, that's correct.
Okay. The trees that are on the north side of the property, so I'm assuming, or I think I'm doing my orientation correct. North side of the property would be between the property and the 118 freeway, correct? Actually, go back to the picture, that one right there. So those trees that I see on the right-hand side of that photo, those are whose trees? Caltrans. So right now, there's no requirement for landscaping to be on that, what I'm going to call the north side of the property. So if Caltrans tomorrow cuts down those trees, this hotel is completely visible, and there's nothing we could do to have them do anything because we've already given the approval without them having their own trees, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. That's it for now. I'll come back with others that I may have. Any other commissioners have any other questions? Okay. With that said, we'll open the public testimony portion of the hearing. Would the applicant like to present the project? One of these days, when these guys are going to say no. I'm assuming the applicant's online?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you
Hello?
fine.
Okay, great. Good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to present our proposed development of a Marriott Fairfield Inn development. Appreciate all the work and effort that the city staff participated in. I guess maybe before I start, there was a few questions. Maybe I'll just respond to those, and then I'll pass it later on to the civil engineer to also respond to those. With respect to converting it to extended stay, this hotel is considered to be a select service hotel, and there's certain design criteria that the brands have for extended stay, where the rooms would be approximately 100 to 200 square foot more than the rooms which are designed here. So if there was a request to change it, and you wanted to get a branded hotel like a Marriott or Hilton, IHG, essentially you would end up halving or reducing the count of the rooms to down to probably from 98 to down to 60 or 58, somewhere in that range, and effectively none of the brands would license a hotel that small. Most of the brands extended stay, Marriott's extended stay brands are like Residence Inn, Staybridge Suites, those kind of things. The minimum prototype they have is around 90 keys. So I don't know if that helps. For us anyway, that it wouldn't pencil with such a low key count. So I don't know if that responds to the commissioner's comments. With respect to the tower really was something that was a key component that was included as part of the previous project approval. We did not propose it. It was staff at the time were really interested in getting a Santa Barbara Mission-style hotel, and that was one of the elements that they wanted to include, and that was also discussed during the prior commission hearings and city council hearings. So, for us, if there's an objection to that, we're not really tied to it. The prototype of the Marriott Fairfield Inn does not include a tower either. So we're open to either way. With respect to the elevation difference between this property and the Big Lots property, it is true as you come in, the elevation difference is somewhere 6 to 8 feet. But as you continue down and you get to the end of both properties at where the Caltrans is, they actually are only a few feet apart. In fact, I have driven a car all the way down the driveway of Big Lots, behind the Big Lots and DIY Center, and driven it onto this property, right where the properties, I guess, meet the Caltrans property. So anyway, I'll continue on with our prepared presentation. So we acquired this property around June of 2011, approximately 9.5 years ago. And then I guess shortly thereafter, we filed an application with the city. Approximately 3 years later, the city of Simi Valley Planning Commission, and shortly thereafter, the city council approved a 3-story hotel, 106 keys, with a 4-story bell tower that you see now, which essentially goes to a 5-story in this design. So after getting approval, we retained an engineer, architect, mechanical engineer, structural engineer, and we started doing the construction drawings. As the plans came in from the different disciplines, we started getting bids to build a hotel, and the bids were far in excess of what our original budget was. They were coming in north of $20 million. This made the project not feasible, unviable, and then we, came back and requested that the city look at a different design. We had several meetings. Essentially, the feedback we received from the contractors was to eliminate the subterranean parking structure. In designing the hotel, a lot of attention has been paid to the aesthetic appearance. Architects have spent a lot of time and effort following the directions. One of the architects also went to Santa Barbara, took pictures of some of the key elements of the architectural the buildings there, and we followed the staff to come up with a Santa Barbara mission-style structure with varying roof heights. We concur with the staff's report and appreciate the recommendation of approval. At this point, I'm going to pass off to the architect, Jerome Scott, who shall discuss the design of the project in a little more detail. Jerome?
Okay, so hello, my name is Scott. I'm the architect currently for this project. I'm not the first one, I'm the second one. This is the aerial front view, which you've seen previously. As Daniel said, this is a mission-style design. It's not a standard Marriott hotel model. So we have a sales job to do with what their people wanted as well. The research that was done by the sheet. One second. I thought I had these here. Here we go. By the other architect, previous architect, on the mission style elements, is summarized on a couple of the detail sheets in this set that you probably have perused, provided to you by staff. So. Again, one of the main items being the bell tower, which we've put a lot of attention to with the columns and applied elements, as well as standard rafter tails. And let's see if I can find the other sheet here. These sort of more or less typical add-on elements, iron accents and clay pipe accents and so forth that you see on these buildings. Even the trash enclosure, to a certain extent, has a clay tile roof. And then the, let's see, so this is some photos that were taken by the previous architect and how we interpreted and used some of the better details that we liked, that staff liked. So we're basically stealing from the best, I hope. And we basically came up with this concept. Here it is from a couple different views. This is from the parking lot. Here's from the aerial view from the parking lot. You can see our screen of trees here along the side to address some of the concerns the neighbors have with respect to views and privacy. We're currently proposing a 6-foot wall, 6-foot high wall here. I believe that's the limit by city requirements at this point. We're pleased to make it higher if such is desired by the neighbors. Good walls make good neighbors. So this this view shows the area that is where this is the spa behind this wall here. The wall is required by the LA County Health Department to protect, obviously, people from falling into the spa are not supposed to be there. And this, one of the neighbors had a question. This is where the trash is located, which is about as far away from them as you can get, tucked around the back of the building. See, this is the exhibit we showed at the last community meeting we had, showing the distances between the various houses here and our property line wall. And then, of course, as staff pointed out, we have a lot more distance between that wall and the building. Looking for one more detail. Here we go. And this is just how our standard hotel HVAC equipment would be addressed in the elevation underneath the windows. So they're relatively unobtrusive. And this is the flat-on views of the color elevations, showing various heights to eaves. And the top habitable floor here is at 31.6 above grade. The tower, obviously much higher, but not occupied, not occupiable by anybody. So even though it looks like a lookout tower, there's no way for guests to get up in there. And this was this section that was shown earlier. We think the combination of the tree line and the fence provides adequate protection, privacy for the neighbors from even the highest floor, highest occupiable floor. And that's, in short, I think the supplemental information to what staff has already presented. Any questions?
Nope.
So I think we have our CFO, Jag Patharana, in the Zoom meeting too, and he'll just share, I guess, some information about generation to revenue generation to the city as a result of this hotel. Jag, you want to?
Before he begins, this is Tim Hodge. Can I ask Mr. Scott one last question?
Sure.
Mr. Scott, I don't think we've quite had the question answered of whether or not the northern portion of the building will sit on existing grade, on some portion of cut, or will be elevated.
We will be cutting. As the civil engineer said, we're daylighting at the south end, so that means we're holding a level all the way to the north.
Okay, and how many feet are you reducing it?
Whatever it takes. We're not going to increase the grade across the front of the building does not increase. So whatever it is at the south end is going to be what it is at the north end.
Well, the reason I'm asking for that detail, if it's available, is it reduces the height of that particular building. You know, it's a certain number of feet now, and if it's going to be sitting 6 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet below grade where it is now, then I can visualize that, or at least in my mind's eye, account for that. So if that information becomes available, it'd be great if you could share it.
If you want to talk to the civil engineer, that may be available now.
Okay, good. I'll reserve my further questions.
David, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, the wall at the northern end adjacent to the 118 isn't, I think it's a 6-foot wall, but I think the depth of cut is only between 4 and 5 feet, and there is a freeboard on top of that. So it's over that stretch, it's only about 4 feet or so.
Thank you.
And I believe presently the site is approximately, 7, 8 feet below the freeway, maybe a little bit more. as it sits today.
Yeah, so
Jag, you want to? I think we have Jag come speak about the revenue, Jag. You have to unmute yourself.
Apologize. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. This is Pat Casarana with the applicant Land Developers and Associates. Earlier today, I had forwarded to staff a brief 2-3-page summary of the revenues that this project will generate to the city. Oh, there you go. It's on the screen right now. So I'll very briefly go through this. So our projections and estimates indicate that this hotel development project will cost approximately $15 million. So essentially, at completion, that will be the assessed value. So over the course of the years, the city's general fund, we believe, will get revenues in the form of the TOT, property taxes, business license taxes, and sales and use taxes. Again, over a 10-year period, we believe the city's general fund will get something like $4.3 million in revenues, most of which will be in the form of TOT, the transient occupancy taxes, with lesser amounts on property taxes, business license, and sales and use taxes. So as I said, these documents that are on the screen right now give a little more detail, but essentially we're talking about $4.3 million over a 10-year period for the city's general fund. That is all that I have, Commissioners.
Okay. We're past the 15 minutes for the presentation. Do you have anything else that you want to say to wrap it up?
I guess just to point out, we tried to push the hotel as far east from the 5 or 6 houses which are adjacent to us. We own hotels, we operate hotels. We've had, as of last year, we had 10 hotels, of which we sold some of them. All of them are branded hotels. Generally, even at full capacity, the hotels only park at a ratio of about 0.65 at all our hotels. And some of those are even airport hotels. We have one or two airport hotels. This type of product in Marriott Flag is really more for your business or families, and a lot of the families they ride together in vans and cars, and they may take 3 or 4 rooms, but only have requirement for 1 or 2 cars. We have a lot of traveling teams with sports and stuff like that, which will come on buses or bus tours. So what we see is, with respect to the parking, we feel that the 0.75 is more than sufficient for our hotel. I think that kind of concludes right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Rice.
Sir, I remember this project from years ago. I was here on the commission at the time, and I remember that very specifically that or at least my memory serves me correctly, that you went out and talked to the neighbors. Did you talk to the neighbors about the modifications to this project by any chance?
We did. We sent somebody out there. Again, obviously we had the neighborhood meeting, which went very well. Everybody was favorable, and then we did send people out there to go door knocking, door to door. Last time we had a petition that we put together, which was signed by almost the entire neighborhood. There was a couple of disgruntled people who were directly next to us, and the one lady, I think, is still there.
Okay, my second thing is on exhibit number 3, which was a parking analysis and study that you did. If I understand the math correctly, the math is wrong. Some of the answers are correct, or some of the math is correct and some is incorrect. For example, the Grand Vista Hotel on, what would that be, May 7th, the occupancy or the parking ratio was actually 0.758, not 0.74. and the others were a little bit, or a couple of the others were higher too. I'm just, and those were on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And it's during COVID, and I know that some of the local hotels are taking families in that don't have cars. They're being put there by the county in order to, get through this whole thing. So I have a hard time believing these numbers. And I understand the other numbers you have in here for some of these cities in LA County, but as staff correctly pointed out, those are all cities where they have a really robust transportation system, and Simi Valley does not have that. So I just want you to know that I'm a little concerned about reducing the parking down to 3/4 per unit. That's it.
Any other questions?
Chairman Mann?
Please, yes, Commissioner Hodge.
Okay, the first question is for Mr. Patharana. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. The $430,000 estimate for tax revenue to the city per annum over a 10-year period of time, I take it that is based on payments that were made to the city, taxes that would be owed ultimately, but there's no analysis as to whether or not that would be incremental or if there would be some leakage from other locations, and thus that the total number that the city would receive as a financial benefit would be less than that. Is this a totally incremental number, or is this simply based upon the dollars that would be paid from this property?
Okay, there you go. Sorry about that. So in answer to your question, Commissioner, essentially what we did was we determined, we projected the revenues from this hotel development over a 10-year period. And I believe the city's TOT rate is 10%. So essentially we determined, based on the revenue projection, what the city will generate for TOT over the 10-year period.
Okay, so but you're not trying to tell us that this is all new revenue. Some of this revenue would be paid if persons stayed at different hotels, correct?
No, this is new revenue to the city's general fund from this particular hotel.
So you're making the assumption that 100% of the business that would come to this hotel would be entirely new business to the city, and no persons who might otherwise stay at an existing hotel and it would pay taxes through their stay at that hotel, for example, the Marriott on Madeira.
Correct.
I don't think that's entirely correct. We had a market study performed. Generally what happens is the 70% of the revenue that comes into a hotel is through the revenues. That's why you sign up with them. There's three brands which are head and shoulders above everybody else: Hilton, Marriott, and IHG. Why do you sign there? Because they send you about 70 to 80% of the business. Now, there is a Marriott there, and they're up, so you would perhaps get a little share from them. There's also leakage in the city of Simi Valley, where people are not being accommodated within the city. There's only a couple of good flags there. So a lot of people will stay in Chatsworth, Thousand Oaks, Agora, those kind of hotels, right? So for the most part, this will be new revenue that will be coming to the city because there's the market study clearly shows there's a demand for a hotel in this particular in the city.
Okay, what percentage of the 430 a year do you think would be entirely new revenue to the city?
I don't have the market report with me, but my recollection it was over 80% of the revenue would be new revenue to the city.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
And is this property? I think this is a Fairfield, correct?
Correct.
And Fairfield's associated with Marriott.
Correct.
It's a Marriott flag. Yeah.
So loyalty programs that would cause persons to want to stay there theoretically could be met by Marriott on Madeira.
It could be, but that's kind of a different. Obviously, there's different segments in the hotel industry, right? And so every brand has, there's luxury, then there's full service, then there's this kind of select service, and then there's extended stay. So the Marriott Courtyard has a full service, is pretty much a full service hotel with a restaurant, bar, and stuff like that. So the profile of the guest generally is different than the profile of the guest who would stay at the Fairfield Inn.
Okay, what in the analysis by staff, there was an indication that the management would not allow guests to attend meetings at the property. Is that accurate?
Correct.
How would you control that?
You would basically, if somebody wants to reserve the room, they'd have to be a guest, and there's a policy that we have where they have to go to a salesperson at the hotel, and the salesperson would verify that they are actually staying in the hotel.
And what about other persons who attend the meeting? So, for example, I'm from out of the city. I come to the property. I want to have a meeting. I want to have it at a hotel for some purpose. Or it doesn't have to be business. It could be non-business related. But I want to rent a meeting room at your property, and I'm staying at the hotel, and I invite 10 people who aren't guests who come to the property to attend the meeting. Is there any prescription against that?
There is not, but generally at this type of hotel, the meeting rooms is very small. I think it's like 700 square feet. I would say for the 90% of the time, the meeting room is not rented out. It's just for people gathering or whatever. When we have sports teams, they'll ask to use the meeting room for pizza and whatever. That's generally the use of the meeting room. It's very, it's not that often that people actually ask to reserve it for a meeting.
The study, the parking study that you did with two hotels on 2 nights for a total of 4 nights. If you look at it, the staff report indicated that it was observational. Do I take it that means that you did not go to the hotel, the Best Western and the Grand Vista, and say how many people are staying here tonight and how many of them reported to you that they have their own automobile on their property? That is not what you did, correct?
Where I talked to the traffic engineer, he's not on the call today, but from my understanding is he did go into the hotel, asked them what their occupancy is, counted the cars, and asked them also if they could provide information as to how many cars were there. But for the most part, I think he got his counts by staying on the property for an extended period of time and counting the cars.
Okay, so as I recall, the staff report said that you had a consultant or some person that you retained to do that, as opposed to a city staff person. Which is it?
Correct. We had that, and then we submitted the report. In fact, he didn't just go out this time. There was a previous time that he went out also, and we submitted that report to the staff, and staff can, obviously corroborate this. But, so there was a different time that he went out also, and then we were informed by staff that you can't just do it on one night. They wanted the traffic engineer to go out 2 times. So then I
don't think that was entirely my question. My question was, the staff report specifically says that you had a consultant do this, and then you just said that that a staff member did it. I take it you mean your staff member, not the city staff.
Yeah, well, it wasn't our staff member. It was an engineer, an outside engineer, traffic engineer that we hired.
Okay, so help me out here. How many hours, and between which hours did this person do the study?
I don't have the report in front of me, but I think it's detailed in the report when he was there.
If it is, I didn't see it. Maybe it was an exhibit that wasn't identified. If staff could inform me of that or take a look and tell me what page that begins on, I'd like to look at it. Because I'm very curious, you would agree as a hotel proprietor that not everybody checks in at the same time and not everybody leaves at the same time. Some people come in late, 10, 11 o'clock, 1 in the morning, might even leave early. Some people come in, check in, and then leave and take care of business. They go to dinner. they're in and out, perhaps even more than once, and there's no reason to assume that because a person is renting a room and has a car that will be there at some point in the day, that it will be there all the time.
I agree. But I believe, in my recollection with talking to the traffic consultant, we asked them to do it in the evening. So that's when you get
time in the evening.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask this is I used to travel for business with great routine. And there were many times that I flew into particular cities and arrived at 11 o'clock at night and would attempt to check in at midnight. And when you try to check in at midnight, the parking lots are full. When you try to check in at 8 o'clock or at 5:30, the parking lots are relatively empty. And so I'm just trying to pin down when this person was there to determine whether or not the data that was provided from 2 hotels on 2 nights has any relevance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was done in the evening. What time in the evening? I don't know. I can call the traffic guy and ask him what, or maybe David. Do you know what time?
Yeah,
David,
my understanding it was approximately between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m.
Do you stand on that?
It was approximately those hours.
Now, what was the decision making on the hotels to use and the nights to use? How was it selected?
I don't remember that. I mean, I think we submitted a study initially, and staff asked for us to update that study because we sent the traffic engineer out, and he only performed it one day. And then the staff, we got some communication from the city's traffic engineer or something saying you have to go out on two days.
2 whole days. Okay. Any other detail that you can provide regarding the method by which this was done, other than what you've reported? I mean, the person goes out and tries to count these vehicles, and I'm a little perplexed as to the Grand Vista. I think the vehicles that were up there were probably staying at the Grand Vista. I'm not so sure that would be true with the Best Western. There are other properties around there, but any other information or detail that you can provide that would suggest that these were studies that we could rely upon?
Not that I mean, all I can say is, being a hotel proprietor, the less occupancy you have, the parking ratio is higher. Generally, when you're full, the ratio goes down because a lot of those people are coming as groups or some aspect like that.
Do you see any difference in parking demand in cities that are, such as Simi Valley, more of an on-the-way kind of stay, as opposed to, I mean, we have some destination opportunities in Simi Valley, but they're not dramatic. Do you see any difference in vehicle parking demand in cities such as Simi Valley, where there isn't a Disneyland right next door?
I mean, I assume so, but our hotels are all in suburban locations. We're not really downtown urban kind of. We have a couple of hotels which are at the airport, which we actually rent out. We do like a park and ride. So because we know we're overparked, right? So we've been running those hotels for many years, so we kind of get a feel of how many parking spaces you can rent out when you have them at a ratio of 1:1, which is a lot of cities go with. So I don't know if that's responsive, but we generally do suburban hotels, and in our experience, it's about 65% is the parking ratio.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? Okay, I just got a few quick follow-ups. I have no idea if you have your landscape architect available. My question is, do we know what the height of a 48-inch box tree that you're proposing as your landscaping tree between the hotel and the residential development that's currently in place.
Jerome, do you have an idea?
Yeah, I mean, I can Google it, but I don't know that off the top of my head.
Because in whoever did the line of sight drawing, I mean, I can extrapolate, it looks like the tree is about 30, 35 feet tall from the drawing, which gives it a great line of sight. But if the tree is only 12 foot tall, then your line of sight drawings are woefully off, and somebody from the hotel may actually have access into looking into somebody's backyard. So that was my question. If the trees are accurate in the line of sight drawing, great. If not, then I think we need to reconsider either a larger tree or at least redefining the line of sight drawings once we get that information.
I just Googled it. 48-inch box, typically fairly mature trees with 3 to 7 years of growth at the nursery. Heights vary 10 to 30 feet. Costs for trees can be up to several $1,000s.
I'm sorry, what was the height of the tree?
10 to 30 feet. Depends on the species.
Okay. So obviously then the line of sight drawing, the tree is not the tree that would be put into place. It would be an aged tree at some point in time.
Correct.
Okay.
We're typically asked to show that, the growth, ultimate growth.
Understood. And again, right now on the north side of the property, there's nothing, actually there is, never mind. I'll take a look at that. I'll reserve that question. Okay, if anybody else have any other questions?
Commissioner Mann, I'm sorry, Chairman Mann?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to follow up on your tree question.
By all means.
I'm going to assume for a moment that the residences on the west side of the property would be less than enthusiastic about having trees as they grow and spread out laterally as it widens out, grow over their yard. Have you accounted for that?
We're required to put in a 10-foot buffer. If we plant the tree in the center of the buffer, that's a 5-foot canopy. So if we pick an appropriate tree with that size of canopy, we will hopefully minimize that amount of overgrowth.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Do we receive any requests from members of the public to make a public statement on Zoom for this item? And I believe we do.
Yes, I believe we do, and believe they could use their hand raise feature, and Ms. Porter will start announcing those names.
Yes, I will begin with Heidi Pedersen. I'm going to unmute you now. Make your statement.
Ms. Peterson, you're with us?
It said the host muted me, so now can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Please, go ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I appreciate the time today to speak as a resident of Simi Valley. I want to just share a few points I have about why I would support this project. I live very close by on Sequoia Avenue, so I'm about a mile away from the site. I was very excited to hear about this project because, for one, it's certainly, if we want to admit, kind of a blight on the community. The site often has mattresses and people just sort of camping out there. It's been not a pleasant thing to drive by. Most of the time that I have, I would welcome something as a Marriott property to that space. I think someone else mentioned previous travel. Before the pandemic, I travel quite a bit for business and quite often stay in Marriott properties, which I, really like their services and their property. So this was, a good thing for me to see this coming to the community. I think it would be great considering the proximity to all the schools. Things such as, sports activities, graduations. I get we're in a different time right now, but that's, hopefully going to go back to the old way soon. So we need to consider that in the future, we need to have places for our family, friends, and, visitors that want to come to our community to stay in a place that, meets the needs, and does. And it would bring dollars to our local businesses. Also what's great about Marriott being one of the largest in the world hotel chains, they have great search engines, so things pop up. I mean, not only will the hotel pop up, but the other sites in Simi Valley would pop up. So it's going to be a boost for all that live here, in my opinion. So, and I think aesthetically it fits really nicely. I mean, like I said, I live about a mile away. I mean, I would be happy to have this property from what I saw tonight in my neighborhood. So those are my points on why I favor the project, and I appreciate your time and giving me the chance to speak my voice.
We appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Next I have is Sylvia LePac. I'm going to unmute you, and you now can proceed to your statement.
Are you with us?
Yes. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Sylvia Lepak, and I reside at 2199 Marble Avenue in Simi Valley. And I support the proposed hotel development for the following reasons. It will benefit the community by creating both long-term jobs and temporary construction jobs. It also the construction of the hotel will cost millions of dollars. This is much needed increased investment in Simi Valley. In these difficult economic times, the hotel will provide tax revenue to the city. Thank you.
No, thank you for your time. Appreciate it very much. Have a good night. Ms. Porter, do we have, who else we got? Just as a reminder, the public, you have 5 minutes for your presentation, and the first two have been well under that. So thank you very much for your being brief. Ms. Porter, do we have other people? Do we have Ms. Porter?
Stand by.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. We have Arsh. He is unmuted, and he can proceed with his statement.
I just want to confirm everybody can hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, appreciate you having me. My name is Arsh Kalon, and I reside at 3716 Horizon Ridge Court. And, I enjoy living in Simi Valley, but a lot of the times I do go to the neighboring cities like Thousand Oaks and Agora because, our city does not have the same quality of facilities and stores. And then when I speak to, people that are from out of town around the LA area, they're not really familiar with Simi Valley, and they're pretty surprised by what this area has to offer. The natural beauty is amazing. Santa Susana Mountains, the Ronald Reagan Library. So I feel that we need quality branded developments like this, the one that's being proposed, if we want the city of Simi Valley to be of the same caliber as Agora or Thousand Oaks. Those areas provide similar types of stores, hotels, and facilities. So I think our city should encourage developments like this. And, this hotel, when it's completed, it'll be a place for tourists and businessmen to stay. And I think this and making Simi Valley, become a more vibrant city as a result of the hotel guests spending money, and, it'll really help the local economy as well. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Yes, we have Scott Jusium. You are unmuted, and you can proceed with your statement.
Welcome, Scott. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. I'll be very brief. I'm a friend of the property. I'm a friend of Mr. Singh. Everybody else who spoke eloquently in favor of this. I also support this project. Much needed. Quality was brought up, and I want to say thank you to Mr. Singh and his entire team for bringing a higher level of quality to our community. And that's really what I think a lot of the citizens would be saying tonight, especially tonight, with everything going on, that we can have growth even amongst a time where we disagree maybe about the height or the color or the placement, but we can all agree that the growth is necessary for our community, and that's why I support this. Certainly money is important to keep the lights on, everyone, but quality is number one. And that's what I think that this group represents, whether it's the level, the height of the trees or the color of the trees or the type of trees. They're taking everything into consideration. They've been waiting years and years and years. It's cost them millions of dollars to simply wait. I think it's time. So that's what I want. I wanted to make sure that I have the opportunity to call in and support the project verbally, which we've done. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Randy Garcia. Randy Garcia, you're unmuted, and you may proceed with your statement.
Welcome, Mr. Garcia. You have 5 minutes.
Hello, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
How's it going?
We're doing well.
I've been a member of Simi Valley for about 20 years or so, and I have a lot of friends that live out here in the city of Simi Valley. I just want to say from my part that I'm in favor of the proposed Marriott Fairfield in the development right now, because I've been remodeling my house and there was just not a lot of places that I could stay at, like Holiday Inn. Every other hotel that we have in Simi Valley right now, I just was never able to stay there, and I had to actually go out of Simi Valley to stay at a place so that me and my family could stay there until we remodeled our home. So I'm kind of in favor of this because it just gives us more motels so we have more options and we can develop more as a community and in the city. And I don't want to take too much of your time, but I'm ready for this one to come in that's new so that we have more places to stay and more options. And I just don't want to take too much of your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Have a good night.
Next, we have Dr. Federer. You are unmuted and may proceed with your statement.
Welcome, Dr. Federer. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm in favor of this proposal. I've known Mr. Singh and some of his associates for several years now. One of them I've known for over 15 years. This project, it's classy, it's elegant, it's laid out masterfully, and it has a great presentation for the city and anybody that'd be driving by it. A lot of work, a lot of effort's gone into it. As Mr. Commissioner Hodge knows, I'm one for controlled growth and development, and this one meets my criteria. So I fully support it, and I encourage you to move it along in the most expeditious way that you can. And thank you for taking my time and letting me speak to you.
Thank you for joining us. Have a good night.
There are no more raised hands.
Okay. Did we receive any email comments on this item after 5 o'clock today?
Yes, we received 2, and I will go and proceed with reading them. Hello, my name is Charmaine. I have been a Simi Valley resident all my life. This town has evolved throughout the years, and with continuous support, I stand by the development of the hotel on this property. I think this is a great addition to our city. Looking forward to it. Regards, Charmaine Santiago. Our second email. Hello, I've been living in Simi Valley my whole life and totally approve of the hotel on this property. The property has been sitting there forever, and we'd be doing good to put something as good as a hotel on it. Kevin Phelps. And that's all for the emails.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Chairman Mann, if I could interrupt you, we could ask if there's anyone who was unable to raise their hands if they want to speak.
Good call, thank you.
That would be a good call. if we missed anyone.
So how would we find out if they aren't able to raise their hand? How do they communicate with us?
Chairman Mann. On there.
I see Sean Hussein with his hand up.
We did ask him previously. Would you like me to unmute him?
By all means, if he wishes to speak, yes.
Okay, I have asked.
I think Philip Terry wishes to speak.
I've asked Sean to. I've allowed Sean to speak.
Okay, who do we have on the line?
So he probably does not wish to speak if he's not responding.
Okay.
I will speak.
And who is this?
Philip Terry. Philip Terry.
We can see a face, but it's very, very dark, but that's okay. We can go ahead. Mr. Terry, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. So I've been a part of this project since we began in 2013 or 14, somewhere in there. And I was on the ground walking to every house over there on North Alden and I think there's West or East Alden and Phyllis Street. And I met with all of the neighbors. As Daniel had mentioned before, there was just really one neighbor. A neat lady, was an old school teacher, and she's in the back corner. There are 6 homes that are adjacent to the property, and then if you take below the parking lot towards the junkyard down, there's another 6 homes. All of those homes that I spoke with had no problem, were in favor of the project we had before, and I went back and spoke with them again on this project. Some of them new folks, but really didn't have much pushback at all, other than the one lady still that was the old retired teacher. I think she just didn't want anything built back there. And I know that every year that we've had to clean the property, that there's usually a few homeless folks living there, and we've had to move them out. But I think that really the design and what we've done, what Daniel has done with that design, which a lot of it came from staff back some years back, and that Santa Barbara feel, that look that the city was looking for. I think they've nailed it, and I think the bell tower is kind of a neat element. Driving down the freeway to see that bell tower, I think will be a neat element. It is similar to the one over on Madera, but I think it's a great addition to the city. And as some of you might know, I have a building over on Royal Avenue, and I've been in the city all my life since 1964. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood that all of those neighbors had been spoke with, and I did that personally. And we didn't just do that street, we did the whole neighborhood. And we actually had very positive response from everybody. I think that's it.
Well, we thank you for your time, sir.
We do have 2 more people raising their hands.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Trudy, I will unmute you. You can proceed with your statement.
Who do we have? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Trudy Reynolds, and I'm a business owner here in Simi Valley. And of course, right now with COVID, probably not a lot of need for in my business for hotel stays or whatever, but I do a lot with events and put on things with musicians and this and that. I think that this would be a great addition for what I do when this is built. And I'm liking the design. I think it's beautiful, and I really think it would be a great addition to Simi for my people that come into town here and there, and always looking for places to stay. And sometimes when there are events, there just aren't enough really nice places to stay. So that's my comment, and that's from a business owner side. So thanks for listening.
Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else?
Yes, we have Sean. I'm going to unmute Sean. He can now proceed with his statement.
Okay. Sean, are you with us?
Hey, how are you guys?
We are well. Thank you, Sean. Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Absolutely. I am totally on board with the project. I'm actually very glad the city imposed the design of the Santa Barbara look, because that's the kind of attention we want to draw to Simi. I own 4 rental properties in Simi itself, and I want that kind of attention because I believe we are one of the best locations because we're sandwiched right between LA County and Ventura County. So for example, like my wife works in LA County, I work in Ventura County, so it's ideal to be in Simi Valley. The only thing we don't like about Simi is there's not any modern new construction or construction that is more appealing and draws more attention to the area. I hate driving down and seeing so many homeless people on that corner sometimes, but the thing is, with this design, this look, it's going to help Simi Valley. Not only that, most importantly, it brings so much tax revenue. If they're going to bring in so much revenue and that kind of taxes are going to come back to the city, it's only going to benefit. So from a tax revenue standpoint, it makes sense. Quality build, it makes sense. It's great for the city. We had an insurance claim in the past, and we had to go get a hotel in Thousand Oaks because my wife was not happy with the hotel accommodation. And Simi, from every attribute, I think this is a home run.
We thank you for your time. Do we have any other parties? One more.
We have Karen Hoyle. I'll allow her. I've unmuted her. She needs to make her statement.
Ms. Coyle, are you with us?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you. Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. I won't take it. Just about everything I was going to say has been said. So basically, I think it's a great new, fresh look for Simi. We have had nothing done in that area. We need more hotels for the movie industry that comes here a lot. We have, like I have, my family's out of town. When they come here, I'd like to have them stay someplace that's nice. I just think it's a great new look for our city. We need jobs. The income that's going to bring for the city is great. I'm all for it. So thank you so much. Have a great day.
Well, thank you.
There are no more raised hands.
Do we have anybody else that's there that maybe has the inability to raise their hand? Or has everybody already spoken that's on? I'm getting the nod.
Everyone that's on the attendees list has spoken.
Perfect. Are there any comments from staff regarding statements made during the public hearing?
Narn may clarify a couple of the items.
Just in response to the question about the grade going towards the north on the site, looking at the civil plan, the grade is around 964 to 965 towards the north, and the finished grade will be around 961.5 to 961. So it will drop around 4 feet.
Okay.
Towards the north.
Okay. Any other comments from staff?
Yeah, we'll just be able to respond to any further questions you may have on the project.
We'll defer questions to us a minute. Would the applicant like to respond to any of the comments regarding statements made during the public hearing? Assume our applicant is still online and he's unmuted. Okay.
Oh.
Mr. Singh? Can you go ahead?
hear me now? Sorry.
There you are, sir.
Yeah, so I mean, I appreciate everybody's input and the support from the community. I don't specifically have anything in response to what was said today, but I did become aware of a letter. The one letter, I think it's from the same person that Phil Terry mentioned. I mean, if I could go through that letter and respond to each of the, I think it's the only letter in opposition to the project. So if you like, I can respond to that if you feel it's necessary.
Feel free. It's your time if you want to respond.
Okay. So let's see. Letter was by Lindsay Rosette, and we do appreciate any constructive comments from the community. It does make the project better. So she states the hotel will not will obscure the sunlight to the neighboring houses. I mean, I could see from the cross section that's not the case. She talks about during construction, grading, there will be dust and stuff like that. We shall implement mitigation measures to reduce the dust by walling down. The city and county have have ordinances and rules and regulations regarding dust. We shall comply with these. The project shall probably produce less dust and emissions than the adjacent freeway did. Ms. Rosette states that they do not have the resources to build a wall adjacent, so we shall be building a perimeter wall and help with that. She also states City of Simi Valley regarding sound that we should also there's rules and regulation the city has, county has, AQ&D does have, so we'll be complying with those regulations. Ms. Rosette speaks of people being able to look into a house. I think we've discussed that. The project was designed by pushing the hotel back as far to the east as possible. This design is even further back away from the houses there on the boundary than the previous project was. An enhanced landscaping buffer is being proposed between the houses and the proposed development, which includes a wall and the trees. Ms. Rosette speaks of the potentially concerned about the hotel guests stealing from her yard and damaging property. I think as mentioned by some of the people, some of the public, presently there are a bunch of vagrants who loiter and sleep on the lot. The few occasions I've been there or visited property, I've seen anywhere from a few to at most 15 homeless folks that stay on the property with mattresses strewn around the rock. This development shall eliminate this. It is a Marriott flagged hotel with professional people coming to the property. Ms. Rosette speaks about the hotel have large gatherings. I think we discussed this. It's been limited to people who stay at the hotel and their guests. Ms. Rosette speaks about the potential of noise from the spa. The spa is approximately 100 feet away from the residence, and there's a wall and landscaping buffer, which also should mitigate everything. And additionally, the spa will only be open up to 9 p.m., so that should eliminate some things. Ms. Rosette asks if there are any other uses for this lot other than what the uses which are allowed, and she talks about residential. Residential is not allowed use I just Googled some of the allowed uses are media production clubs, community centers, museums, accessory retail, bookstore, restaurants, bank, offices, emergency shelter, and dental clinics. If you obtain the CUP, then the additional uses are health and fitness center, library, schools, gas stations, hospitals, residential care, and broadcasting studios. So we believe this project is the best use. Over time, a hotel becomes it's a fabric of the community. It's like a community center, a small community center, which provides benefits to the community. So I think I've responded to all the issues that she raised. So that's all I have, unless you have any further questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So do any commissioners have any questions? Sorry. Oh. So do any commissioners have any questions of either staff or the applicant while we're still on public hearing?
I have a question of staff, or I believe it's staff. That's what I want to talk to. If I understand in our documents here, it says that in a typical time, excluding where we're at right now, in a typical time, the vacancy rate for hotels in Simi is between 15 and 30%. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Adding a hotel, does that mean that typically the vacancy rate would go up? And what's the tipping point for, Mr. Singh may be able to answer that one, but what's the tipping point where it doesn't make sense to operate a hotel, percentage-wise? And where I'm going with this, Mr. Singh, is that if we open up this hotel, is it going to take away customers from one of the others, and then we end up with this albatross on the other end of town? It's just out of curiosity.
So yeah, like I said, we did do a market study. We also Smith and Travel. We're in a star report on the existing hotels. From there, you can glean what the occupancy rates are, the average daily rate. It really depends on what the average daily rate is, what the breaking point is. But based upon what we see in Simi Valley, what the report concluded, it's around 55-60%. With the present average daily rate is probably the breaking point. Prior to the pandemic, the average occupancy was running around 85% occupancy. Generally, you need a hotel when it gets to about 65-70. That's what the marketing people, consultants say. Just for your information, we do, and most brands like Marriott or Hilton or IHG, they will not sign you up unless they feel there is a demand in that location, right? So we do have an executed franchise agreement with Marriott for this location.
Well, thank you. I had one other thing I just wanted to ask, if I could ask the applicant something.
Yeah, we're still in public comment.
Okay, so Mr. Singh, I may be off on where I know you have the one neighbor who really is not happy with this project, right? The one, and if I remember correctly, she's kind of, like you said, kind of in the corner or near the corner. Is that correct, the house?
I didn't meet with her. That was Phil Terry who had met with her.
Okay, well, if that was the case, if it's one of, say, the last 2 or 3 houses or something, and that neighbor would accept you building a higher wall, and the city would accept you making an 8-foot wall instead of a 6-foot wall, at least from that point back, would that be something you would consider?
We're fine with that. We would accept that condition.
Okay, thank you. Nothing else for
Thank you.
Staff.
Okay, well, I got a question. Is an 8-foot wall possible in the city of Simi, or are you maxed out at 6 foot?
If we approve it.
Assuming we approve it, but can you get an 8-foot wall between these two properties, or is there something unique about not doing an 8-foot wall?
So Norrin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe since there's a change in zone from residential to commercial, the 8-foot may be allowed?
Usually 6 foot, exceeding the 6 foot requires proximity to like a major thoroughfare or backing up onto commercial or industrial, if I remember correctly.
we'll get you that answer.
Thank you.
Okay, while you're working on that answer, I have a question. What is the current transient occupancy tax rate in the city? Is it a percentage? Is it a flat dollar amount? And the reason I ask is they brought up projected revenues for the city of Simi, and they list transient tax at a pretty significant number of $290,000. What is the percentage or what is the tax rate? Does staff know? Mr. Singh, do you know?
I would refer that question to our CFO, Jaggi. I think he called into the city and spoke to somebody. So, Jaggi, you want to respond to that? You probably have to unmute yourself.
Yes, Commissioner, the TOT rate in the city is 10%.
10%.
Yeah.
So in the calculation of your numbers, where you have year one, $290,000, I'm assuming there's a mathematical formula. You took a certain percentage of the 100 rooms, and I'm just rounding up to 100 rooms, times an occupancy rate, times the average rate for the room, times 10%. That's how you came up with these numbers?
Yes, sir. If you just look at year one on that schedule, we have room revenues of $2.9 million. 10% of that is $290,000.
And the room revenue of $2.9 million, how was that calculated?
That's essentially, if you look a little further above on that same column, you'll see we projected the occupancy for year one at 65% at a average rate of $125 times the number of rooms in the hotel.
Got it. Okay.
And we have your answer on the fence.
Okay.
Commissioner Mann, yeah, so the height of a rear or side residential fence may be increased by up to 2 additional feet for properties abutting, for residential zone property adjacent to a commercial or industrial zone property. So we can go up to 8 feet.
So, okay, through and through, we could do 8 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes, Commissioner Hodge, go ahead.
What would be the practical application of that? There's currently walls there. I assume that they're 6 feet. You just come along and add 2 courses or 3 courses to make it 8 feet. Do you replace the wall? What happens? The neighbor owns half of that wall. What happens if the neighbor objects? I mean, so how do you practically get that done?
Good question, staff.
So I'll respond to that. Depending on who owns the wall, it's not necessarily one owner or the other. It depends on where the wall is situated. This project is required to have a 6-foot wall per the separation requirements. The homeowner could come back in a non-HOA situation to add 2 feet to his side of the wall. In this situation, the developer could be asked to also raise a wall on their side of the property. It'd be essentially the same thing if there's an agreement between the...
So there'd be 2 walls? There'd be the existing 6-foot wall plus an 8-foot wall next to it?
I'm not sure if there's 1 or 2 walls currently. Is the block wall existing? Okay, so there's an existing block wall, and is that owned by the property owner? Okay.
So in theory, the developer either has to get to an agreement with all those owners about building a new 8-foot wall, or I guess the developer could build his own 8-foot wall on his property.
That is correct.
If we condition upon an 8-foot wall, which...
If that condition's added.
Okay. Commissioner Hodge, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any other questions before we close the public testimony portion of the hearing?
I have a couple questions, and I'm not sure if this is for staff or for the developer. On the project is adjacent to existing businesses, meaning, for example, a restaurant and a school. Is there any way to put conditions on how and when construction is done in terms of hauling in or out dirt or doing kind of construction times? The evening and weekends is a busy time for a restaurant to have construction going back and forth, or when we have students at the school, is there any way to do conditions on how and when things are done, or can we do trucks of dirt going out the side through the back lot, big lots, parking lot, or other kind of conditions or restrictions?
Commissioner Tolson, the typical construction hours are from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. And that could involve specific activities that you're mentioning. I don't know if Public Works Engineer Steve Benjamin's on the line, if the grading permit may have different hours of operation. Do you know if Steve Benjamin's there? Okay. Once in a while, there are restrictions on the grading permit, but as far as determining what those hours should be and how to enforce that could get rather complicated.
Is there a way to get a commitment from a developer to say, we've got a community partner here that's going to be helping our future people staying there, going to the junkyard, and their Saturday and Sundays are jam-packed. And to have construction limited on those days versus Monday through Friday might be something to consider.
Well, you could raise that question to the applicant. They're probably more familiar with some of their construction activities.
Javi, first of all, I don't think the ordinance doesn't allow for Sunday construction, and we wouldn't be performing it. I think, if I'm correct, at least the plans I looked at, grading is balanced on site, so there's no hauling of dirt or anything back and forth. It's a pretty flat site, so we should be in and out grading that site within about 4 to 6 weeks. Certainly open to working with our neighbors. We're going to be neighborly. I've met with the junkyard people several times. This hotel does not have a restaurant, so any one day at an average occupancy of about 70, based upon our experience, you usually have 2 people to room. You have 150 people on a daily basis that will need to eat and do other things. So they seem pretty favorable. We have access and influence where we send those people. So I think this project brings a lot of benefits to the neighborhood too, and we certainly want to be neighborly and cooperative, and we'll continue to do that with the neighbors. And we'll comply with whatever the city ordinances are regarding construction times and whatever mitigations such as dust control and things like that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
If there are no further questions, I will close the public testimony portion of this hearing. Okay, public testimony is closed. Questions or comments from the member of the Planning Commission? You can reserve the right to come back later and say your thoughts on the project. If you have any questions, let's get those out of the way first.
Oh, questions, huh?
Now that we closed it.
Well, if you want to do that, then well, I'm just going to give you the whole thing because it's just easier for me to do it this way.
That works for me.
The first thing is that I really like the architecture of this building. It's great. It really is. It's something else. I know that I voted to approve this project originally, was it 6 or 8 years ago? But the architecture is really nice. I like that. I like the articulation in the sides and in the roof. I really appreciate the fact that the applicant wants to put in 48-inch box trees. That's about the largest size that we normally see, period. I do have 2 major reservations, though, and the first is the height, because my fear is that if we start allowing 4-story buildings, even as exceptions, that suddenly, we've opened Pandora's box. And the second one is that I have a problem with reducing the parking to 3/4 of a space per unit, because even by the applicant's thing, one of those that he used as an example was actually over that. And on a Wednesday and a Thursday, I don't know. I have a problem with that. And I think that we should consider reducing parking. I think that's a great discussion, but I don't think that 3/4 per room is enough. So that's where I'm at right now. Those are my 2 big things, are the height and also the parking. Other than that, I like the project.
Commissioner Mann?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to follow Commissioner Rice, if I might.
By all means, go
I
ahead.
agree with you. I was on the Planning Commission when we originally approved this project, and as I recall, I voted in favor of it. There are some small things that I see are an issue here that we talked about at that particular time. For example, the parking right up against the wall of the residents on the west side, and as I recall, the argument, well, not the argument rather, but the position taken by the applicant at the time was, the parking is going to be underground. There's not going to be people parking there and talking there and sounds of vehicles, et cetera. But this is a commercial property, and I think that the neighbors have always known that this is commercial property, and these are the kinds of things that you have to experience, and it's not like it was changed from a park to this commercial property. So I really, frankly, don't have a lot of objection to that. I like the idea of the screening trees, and I think that will mitigate the issues. I like that this project, as reconstructed, has a smaller footprint. It's a little bit less. Large on the north side. It's not as close to the neighbors on the north side. I like the architecture a great deal, and the architect should be proud of himself, and the property owner should be proud of it. I'd like to see the bell tower come down. I don't think that it's necessary, and it would help reduce the height issue. But even with all of this, here's where I have a big time issue. It has to do with the parking, and I agree with Commissioner Rice. We have all these other cities in Ventura. I have to believe that all require at least 1-to-1. And I have to believe that this isn't the first time that an applicant came up and said, hey, we could do with less parking, and we would like to have less parking, and yet no other city in the county allows for that. Now, that is some evidence of a lack of interest in reducing it. But what it really gets down to is this. If somebody comes to the commission and I were to vote one way or another, and somebody were to say, geez, Tim, why did you do that? Why did you approve this? I can't imagine me saying, well, they went to 2 hotels in our town for 2 nights, and based upon that, the average was less than 0.75. First of all, we're not planning for the average. We're planning for demands really at peak, because the fallout of having too little parking when you have peak, not the average, but rather when you have more than the average, is that these people have to park somewhere else. And I agree with Commissioner Tolson that the neighboring businesses very frequently use 100% of their parking, and in fact, sometimes cars get parked in this area. So the downside to not getting the parking right is pretty adverse, because where do those people go? They're going to have to be parking way down, maybe in the parking lot in the neighboring business. I don't think they're going to be able to park on Cochrane. There's not really an opportunity for that, very close. So we have to get the parking right. So when the applicant says, well, we had this 2 nights at two properties, I don't think that the properties are consistent with this property. I don't think that the usage is consistent, and I frankly don't think that those studies really, that quote study, end quote, is a study. It's an anecdote. It's 4 nights of anecdote that don't rise to the level of statistics. I've taken a look at the parking study. It's Exhibit 3, and I had reviewed this before, the questions before, and of course the letter that was identified in Exhibit 4 from Mr. Singh. And there's nothing in here about the hours that this person who went out there and did this study, what hours they were out there. If we can't have it in writing, I have a real problem with accepting it. The other thing is this. We're talking about changing zoning for hotels of all varieties. So in Mr. Singh's letter, he makes multiple references to properties like this and to this market segment. That they don't really need 1-to-1 because of the specific segment that they're in. And those are mentioned various times in his letter. I can quote it. It's on page 2 with the bullets. It says, hotels in this segment have, and Simi Valley is a suburban market. Our development is not proposed to be a resort, etc. The problem that I have is that you're asking us to change the zoning for every iteration of a hotel property. So this would, if we change it now, it wouldn't just go to your property. Maybe it would be enough for your property. But the change in the zoning would go to from a luxury hotel to a budget hotel, from a business property to a motor hotel, from a resort to a B&B, from suite hotels to long-term residences. And you're asking us to change it, and I understand that you fervently believe, and I'm sure that you're being honest with it, that your types of properties don't require this, but you're asking us to make a change that goes to every form of hotel property. And without having more to suggest that the market has changed so that all these other cities, including Simi Valley, which went 1-to-1 as a requirement, that the market space has changed in such a way that 0.75 is sufficient for all of these segments, and that we're not going to get burned because we're trying so much to approve what I think is a good project. And I would love to figure out a way to approve this if you take down the bell tower. And I am concerned about the wall stuff, but I can't make a recommendation to make a zoning change, text amendment, for every potential property iteration of a hotel because it works. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be speaking to the project because they don't have an opportunity to respond. I apologize, Mr. Singh, because it works for this project. So based upon as what we're looking at right now, I just don't have enough information to make a recommendation to the City Council to change the zoning text, text to change the parking requirement from 1-to-1 to 0.75.
Okay. Commissioner Tolson, Vice Chair Castleberry.
I'll go
ahead. Go ahead, Commissioner Tolson.
Thank you very much. So this version of the project, as opposed to the previous one, I think is actually better. I like the fact that it's set back 52 feet away from the residence walls. I think it's a perfect addition to the adjacent business. The junkyard, I think, is going to profit based upon this property being done. I think it's a better use of what it's there now, and like one of the residents said, what's there now is a blight with homeless there. I think the line of trees, the Caltrans is elevated, and so that's going to do some blocking. In the staff report, it asked the neighborhood council, recommended they talk to the neighbors, and I think that they did over and above that, and we had zero, aside from one letter of complaint. I talked to the owner of the restaurant, and she was concerned about her weekend business when they're doing construction. She's worried about the trucks hauling in and out dirt while they're doing whatever grading. I spoke to the director of the tourism district for the city of Simi Valley, who handles the TOT and that kind of thing. The weekend is where they do wedding venues. They also have soccer tournaments, field hockey, and hockey events in addition to our Reagan Library. So in terms of the numbers of vehicles, there's a lot of families, and it's not necessarily two individuals and one hotel. I think the parking, the development code amendment, I think is okay. And I frequent, in terms of what I do for my business, in terms of going to the different hotels around Simi Valley, and for the most part, all the parking lots are empty most of the time, with the exception of when a conference room is being used for an event. In addition, because of COVID and because of the fact that Simi Valley is in the TMZ zone, there's a lot more filming done in Simi Valley, and when they do that, they'll book hotel rooms for that purpose. And I think the increased revenue is a tremendous need here in Simi Valley, and I think the applicant has done over and above. The design, the Santa Barbara mission style, the elements, the iron elements is great. If the bell tower was ditched, I'm okay with that too. a 6-foot wall with the trees. I think everything is I think they've done an excellent job, and I'm in favor of it. Thank you much.
I'll go ahead and go. So I agree with Commissioner Rice on the architecture. I like the articulation. I like the design. I honestly think that the building itself would be a fine addition to the city of Simi. I think the two issues that we have on this project are kind of indicative of two issues we need to tackle as a city in general. The idea that 4 stories is a tall building, unfortunately with SOAR, we're hitting our city urban restriction boundaries, which means we can't go out anymore. We have very few development parcels left in town to build things, and we're going to have to start talking about density and height. While we have made the recommendation, City Council has not yet heard the project. We saw the letter from HCD regarding the Tap Alamo project. That's another 4-story building that we've already had to recommend for approval. I don't believe this is going to be the last one we see. So height is not going to be an issue for me on this project. The other thing is the parking discussion that we're having. Our city is overparked. There's no denying that. Several of our commercial places are vastly overparked. A lot of the times it seems like we're more concerned with where we're going to house cars and where we're going to house people. Now, while this isn't a housing development project, I've lived in the city for quite a while. I've almost never seen a hotel parking lot completely full in the city. I've rarely see commercial properties completely full. So I think that the adjustment, bringing it down, is needed. We can discuss ratio, but I think 0.75 is not a bad ratio to be at. I think we need to have a discussion beyond our hotel and motel parking standards and our parking standards citywide. I'm in favor of this project. I plan to support it. I think that the amount of community support we have for this project, we don't normally see that many people speak in support versus in opposition. So I think that's another big factor that we need to consider. And yeah, I'm in favor of this project.
There we go. Height is a consideration. The previously approved main building is 42 feet. This one is 51. Is 9 feet a huge difference? Probably not, considering the lobby tower on the prior one was 53 feet. And so if we make the lobby tower at 53 and the main building height of this new hotel or the mod 1 is 51, probably not a huge deal. The bell tower at 66, I kind of think we're getting excessive. I don't know if we can either condition it upon the developer taking it back either for reconsideration to come back without the bell tower. I don't think he's going to lose an entire floor, but if we can work on something with the height, whether we go from the 50 to the 66 possibility. Parking, I have a concern on the parking as well. The parking, the 4 data points that the developer provided to me is not enough to overshadow what we would be doing is making the change for this and all future hotels and motels, and allowing current ones to go back and make modifications to what they have for parking, which is why I asked the question earlier. So I got to be convinced. We have traffic studies from every development that comes to us. I got to be convinced that we can get or the developer can bring to us a parking survey to determine whether or not the 0.75 is sufficient, whether it's 0.8, 0.9, anything below or 0.1. The 4 data points provided, I just don't think that's going to, well, I can tell you right now, it doesn't necessarily fly with me. But the question is, do we think that the developer could either A, come back with a study that would allow us to consider making the change to below the 1, closer to the 0.75 if he gives more data points and more information and the time of the day and some historical data to see whether or not that would be useful. I also don't know if a shared parking agreement would be a consideration. If the junkyard has extra spaces that they could give up in a shared parking agreement, if the city would allow that as part of the approval process here. to allow him to count spaces in a shared parking, or being that now we're going through the east side of the property into the back side of what is known as Big Lots, and I know there's parking back there. Again, if a shared parking agreement can be used as part of this, then we may be able to do something to keep this project going. The height, that's obviously a consideration, if the developer would consider it. So I guess my question for the planning commissioners, is there the thought about, instead of either approving or rejecting, is there a thought about going back to the developer saying, come back to us with a better parking survey, come back to us if the city will allow a shared parking agreement, and perhaps come back to us to making some adjustments on the building height for some of the people that have those concerns?
I would add on to that if we're going to have the developer do some changes, if we want to talk about the 8-foot wall.
Okay.
And see if we can have the developer talk to the neighboring residents to see if they would be in favor of an 8-foot versus a 6-foot wall.
Commissioner Tolson, Commissioner Hodge, thoughts on about asking the developer for a continuance?
Well, I have a question of Mr. Gibson before I can make comment on that. Mr. Gibson?
Go ahead.
You there? Okay. We would be making a recommendation to the city council to accept the project or to accept it with modifications or decline the project, correct?
Yes, if you can't make a recommendation on the zone change, it would be a...
Nope, I lost you.
If you can't make
Mr. Gibson?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. I lost you for about 10 seconds.
Okay. So because the zone text amendment's involved, you'd have to make an affirmative recommendation to the city council. Otherwise, the project would have to be appealed to the city council. So your options would be see if a continuance would work to a date uncertain, or it would be a recommendation for denial, which the applicant would appeal to the city council.
Well, all right, so thank you for that. So my recommendation would be, I think that the developer has already made reference that he'd be perfectly willing to strike the bell tower and save some money, and apparently it wasn't something that they wanted in the beginning anyway. So that probably shouldn't be any kind of pushback on that. I would like some answer as to how we would get the wall issue resolved. From what I saw out there, that the 6-foot wall that exists today would probably be inadequate. Hang on just a moment. Okay, thank you. As it stands now, I mean, I simply cannot make recommendation to the city council, or rather approve, and it would force the developer into a appeal situation, which they may prefer, as opposed to, coming back, with the delay. They may prefer actually going to the city council, appealing the denial, which would include, the issue regarding the parking. I have serious problems with the parking issue. I just don't think that the standard of proof has been offered whatsoever, and this just sort of guessing that 0.75 would be appropriate. I don't think that's a good way of doing business. So, my plan is to not a vote to approve the modification to the text of the zoning requirement. If the developer would rather get that rejection and then proceed to the city council on an amendment, I'm good with that. If they would rather come back to us with more data, which I would suggest that they would want to get before they go to the city council, as opposed to going with what amounts to really, I would think they would stand bare or stand naked with those 4 data points and try to get that to say, yeah, we should change this, because it just isn't evidence, and I don't know how you can change the zoning without evidence. So, but maybe the developer would rather come back to us on a date uncertain and address these issues, or maybe they'd rather proceed to the city council. I'm okay with whichever.
Commissioner Tolson, thoughts?
I'd like to see that this project move forward. And I think the developer would have more success if he did accept the continuance and make the slight changes that we are discussing, so that he then can go to the city council with a approval from us, and with some better data for us, and then better data for the city council.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments?
I agree quite a bit with what Commissioner Hodge said. I do also think that, I mean, but see, this whole changing the whole parking thing for future projects really is, I don't like that at all. I do like that we mentioned, you know, the possibility of working on shared parking, and I think that's something we should look forward in the future, but I don't really see how, like, this project could share that back parking lot with Big Lots. I'm not.
Well, remember, because you have a driveway that now
You'd have to have the driveway down, right?
Right.
And then, I mean, if they could work that out, then yeah, sure.
Or I don't know if there's enough parking if the junkyard is already maxed out their parking, whether or not they have any extra
But
spots to give.
There, as Commissioner Tolson correctly pointed out, there are times when you go to the junkyard and they're parked out there where this project would be, and there would not be enough space that they'd be able to share it. So even if they had a shared agreement, there's times where I don't think there'd be any room anywhere. So to me, the only logical thing would be to work on a shared agreement with Big Lots or wherever the property owner is over there. But I, you know, I mean, if the developer wants to just, I mean, because I can't see this going forward, if the developer wants to take it to the city council, then I'm okay with that. If the developer wants to continue it, I'm okay with that as well. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, I'm assuming the developer's been listening to the whole thing?
Yes.
Mr. Singh?
You're muted, Mr. Singh. There you go.
Do I need to open the public hearing again? Okay, let's go ahead and open the public hearing again so we can have a conversation with the developer, Mr. Singh. Mr. Singh, are you with us?
I am.
Okay, so you've heard most of our comments and thoughts, and I don't know if a shared agreement is possible either with the junkyard and, because I don't know what the parking restrictions are or the requirements are for the city. That's something you'd have to do some work on, whether or not something can be done with the Big Lot parking lot, and or whether or not you could just get a parking lot survey to come up with more data points. Whether you do it for us or you do it for the city council, I think somebody down the line is going to have to come up with some more information. I can't speak for them, but I got to be convinced that we're kind of the lighter version of the city council, so I think what concerns we have here, you're probably going to see there. The same with the height, whether or not, you know, you want to lose the bell tower or not. It probably would accommodate some of the needs or the wants to lower the overall height of the building. Is this something you'd be amenable to consider a continuance, or what are your thoughts, sir?
You know, we've looked and we've approached the Junkyard Cafe ownership, and we've approached the Big Lots and the other people, as well as Caltrans. There seems to be I guess, you know, from our perspective, if we're required to do that, it puts us in a very weak position when it comes to negotiation with either the Big Lots or the other people, right? If they feel that they have us over a barrel, then being business people, they're trying to extract the most from us. We don't really feel that there is a need for it. We certainly continue to pursue with Caltrans that issue of working something out. I think there's about, I forget how much, 30 feet between us and the actual freeway where they have plants and stuff like that, right? So we're continuing to explore that. But really, I think we'd like to move forward with this project. If we're happy to get conditioned to eliminate the bell tower. As we said, it was not really something that we proposed, but something that we accepted from the staff. We're willing to get conditioned on the 8-foot wall situation. I'm not sure. I mean, having dealt with a lot of different consultants, you know, this kind of thing seems to be a little fungible. The parking deal, you go to one consultant, will tell you one thing, go to another consultant. So, I certainly agree that perhaps more information can be gathered and stuff like that. I don't know if there's a way the city attorney perhaps can see if there's a way to address the amendment. So the city has more control in future as projects come, and more discretion as to whether those projects get approved or not. If the commissioners are agreeable to at least consider this one, but I guess I would be open to moving the project forward, and even perhaps say, okay, we're agreeable to this ratio, and at least then we have an approval and we can go forward, but we can't pull a permit until we make a deal with either Caltrans or the Big Lots people, or and I'm kind of in the same boat with or agreement with the commissioners with respects to the junkyard people and the ownership there. I'm not sure if that would make sense because of the amount of traffic that's there from the junkyard. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Okay. So just
Mr. Singh, before I'm sorry, Chairman Mann, might I interrupt?
By all means, please.
Thank you. Mr. Singh, I hope, I'm speaking remotely, and I don't know, I'm speaking with a loud voice because I'm hoping that this way my voice carries through the speakers, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope that the tone hasn't suggested throughout here that I'm opposed to your project. I like your project. I'd like to see it go. I'd be excited to see it go without the bell tower. But my big time problem is this. I just don't see where you've given us enough information to say that this project only needs 0.75. I think that it's just too light. And the part where I just fall flat on my face and just could not even bend my arm behind my back to vote for it is you're asking us to change the text language to our city ordinance that goes to every iteration of hotel, period. Your specific letters, I believe them, I'm sure that you wrote in there is supportable, but it doesn't address any of those other hotels types. It addresses your hotel type, period. There's nothing in there that suggests, there's no evidence whatsoever to suggest that 0.75 works for any other kind of hotel. And before we make these changes, especially in the light of every other city in our county, using a particular standard, and we're going to change it to the tune of 25%, there has to be something. I just don't think that we should be making decisions based upon, well, that's probably good. To me, that isn't a basis to make a decision. There has to be evidence. So sharing that little extra tidbit and understanding that I like your project and I want to vote for it, but I can't vote for the text change. And I'm not sure that you've given us enough information, even if yours was the only hotel that would ever be built in perpetuity, that 0.75 is good enough. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, so I guess, Mr. Singh, just to paraphrase, I don't believe we can condition just your project with the parking and zone text amendment. So being that, and I don't speak for any of the other planning commissioners up here, but if the approval has to go that it's going to be not only for your hotel and everything else in the future and everything else in the past, that the parking and zone text amendment, I don't think is going to happen tonight. We just don't have enough data to bind ourselves based on your 4 data points and your letter and what your people have done to move forward with this. I'm asking if you will take a continuance to come back to us with either more data for us to reconsider approving a parking and zone text amendment and or remove that and have a shared parking agreement so that we can actually not worry about the parking and zone text amendment. If you do, that's great. The rest of the issues, obviously, we still need to address. But if you don't want a continuance and you want a finding, then obviously the commissioners will vote their conscience either to approve or deny based on a multitude of criteria, and then you go forward to the city council. Which would you prefer to do?
Would you guys be okay with a date certain so we don't have to republish? And I mean, starting this process with the amendment, we anticipated it was going to be a 6-month process. It ended up being 2 years, I think, whatever it was. So every time we do a development, it seems like when you have to come back and it's not a date certain, there's publishing requirements and
Well, so
Mr.
can we
Gibson,
do
what would he have to do in order to avoid the notice requirements?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Hodge?
What would, this is a question for Mr. Gibson, what would the applicant have to do in order to avoid the publishing / notification requirements?
Okay, sorry, I was interrupted here at the table. It would have to be continued to a date certain, which that way it'd be published that method. It could be set to the next, like a hearing date in January or December. And then if he's still not ready at that point, it could be continued again.
Can it be continued again without having to republish?
Yes.
So if you set it to a date certain today, he does not have to worry about publishing. And if he's not ready, he can get a continuance or redo the date and still be exempt from having to publish, correct?
That's our typical procedure.
Okay, so rather than having a date unspecified, we should, if he would consider this, Mr. Singh, that we would certainly give you a date certain, and if you can come up with the data and are prepared to present at that time, great. If not, then you would simply ask for an extension, and a new date certain would be set. Is that correct, Mr. Gibson?
If this keeps going on, we'll eventually probably want to renotice it. But
I understand.
Our first couple continuances are reasonable,
Okay.
just so we can keep the signage up to date and just keep the neighbors up to date. After a while, it kind of falls off the radar, so we want to have a reasonable date certain continuance.
Okay, so obviously I was just handed 2 date certains of either 11/18, which is 2 weeks, or 12/2, which is roughly a month. I have no idea how long it would take to even consider getting a survey. Are we able to give a date certain into January?
So we don't have the calendar yet. We were planning on doing that on December 2nd, present that to the commission.
So I guess at this point, we can give a date certain of December 2nd. If Mr. Singh is ready, great. If not, then he'll have to ask for continuance. Once we set the calendar on December 2nd, we can then give him a date certain into January, February?
Chairman Mann, maybe we should ask Mr. Singh what he thinks he needs.
Okay, Mr. Singh?
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think we can shoot. We'd like to shoot for December 2nd.
Okay. Go ahead.
With your permission.
Please.
I just think that if we're going to come back to this, we also need a report from staff on parking at hotels. I mean, it can't just be the applicant, because we're talking about making a text amendment or a change that's going to last for a long time, most likely. So it can't be just the applicant. The city's going to have to show us some data as well.
Can you guys do something between now and December 2nd?
We're basing evidence based on what the applicant's study is. The city might have a different approach to doing a text amendment. We've provided some of that data, but a lot of it relies on the applicant because it's an applicant-initiated text amendment. As you've seen tonight, there's lots of variables involved with parking for hotels. And provide that information can only go so far without additional staff resources.
Right.
So I'm not sure how far staff will go with a completely thorough analysis. We will analyze what's provided to us and provide general recommendations, but doing a full-blown study might take additional time. So we'll just have to see where that December 2nd date hits.
Okay.
I agree with Commissioner Rice that it would be really helpful to the commission, at least to me it would, to have some data that provides at least some basis or background for the one-to-one throughout Ventura County. I mean, what was the basis of using one-to-one? If there ever was a basis, if it was just something that somebody came up with, if there are other properties, I don't know what it is that would be available. I really don't. But if there is something that's available, it would be helpful to have whatever information is available. It's a big decision. I mean, I think this is a big decision, and I want to make the right one. So the more information that's available, that's objective and supportable, the better.
Vice Chair Castleberry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Tolson.
I have nothing.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Hodge, were you still speaking? My apologies.
No, I was done.
Okay. Vice Chair Castleberry.
I just looked at the calendar, so we do have a meeting December 16th scheduled as well, so that is another possibility for us. Did we cancel that one?
So December 16th looks like it's going to be canceled due to some outside issues.
Okay. Disregard that. What I was going to say is I agree that I think we need some data from staff. I just want to be aware that we don't put a huge burden on staff with less than a month notice to get that data to us. So I know we haven't set the schedule in January yet, so it's quite difficult. So maybe December 2nd will have to be continued again. But
Here's my recommendation. Mr. Singh has already indicated that he could be available to come back on December 2. If staff doesn't have the ability to do that, maybe we could work with him to push it back into January. But, maybe we will have enough data by December 2. I want to do whatever we can to help minimize delays. If another, continuance is absolutely necessary, I'm sure he wouldn't object. So why don't we go ahead and shoot for December 2?
I have one process question real quick. So do we normally approve our calendar for the following year at the beginning of the Planning Commission meeting before we would get to the continuance on December 2nd? Okay, be on the consent. Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioners have any comments? Mr. Singh, would you like to make a request or accept a continuance until December 2nd, 2020?
You're muted, Mr. Singh.
So, I appreciate that. So, is there, could we get a scope from, maybe that would help, if we get a scope from the city staff and then we can give it to the consultant? That way there's, there's not too much back and forth and stuff like that. So that was clear. And then I don't know if the city attorney's there, if there's a way to couch the amendment so it's not for every single hotel, if it's maybe for a select service hotel. I don't know if there's a way to do that. We're certainly not trying to bound the city by our request for the entire city. So I don't know how to, if there's a way to figure that out.
I mean, we'll look at all, you'll meet with us and we'll look at all options.
Okay.
So, Mr. Singh, will you accept or do you request, I guess is the same thing, a continuance to December 2nd?
I accept.
Okay. Motion second or just consent? Okay. Then what he said. Okay. Okay. 4. Right now we are going to do I move continuation on this matter to the meeting of December 2nd per the applicant's request.
There you go.
Okay. Now we can proceed to the next item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Singh.
Mr. Singh, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, and I'm sure that you and staff will be able to get together and work this out and see what we can do and bring it back to us on December 2nd.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me find my agenda. I'll be happy camper, maybe. New bit, oral reports and oral communications and reports. Any planning commissioners? Staff, does the staff have anything to report?
Yes, Chairman Mann, members of the commission, just letting you know one of our other continued items is scheduled to be heard on November 18th. That's the 16 apartment complex at 1740 Patricia Avenue, a continued public hearing.
We already asked about commissioners. Mobile home rent mediation board?
No items tonight.
Tree advisory board?
No items.
This concludes the meeting of November 4th, 2020. Next scheduled meeting will be November 18th, 2020. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Bye all.
Goodbye.